I consider myself very lucky to acquire this several years ago when it was first introduced in the US. It wasn't popular or widely available due to the supply and demand. The pricing didn't make it appealing. Initially priced at $249, it was deemed overpriced and dismissed. Now a global sensation and widely available, let's explore the opportunity of growing our own to indulge. This melon was rated Fuji for their highest quality. There are Fuji tiers that fetch far north of the thousands range. Standing below them are Yama, known for its shape, pattern, and color. You'll find these in 25% of the melon population. One step down you'll find Shiro, known for its undamaged shape and pattern. These reside in 50% of the melon population. At the bottom you'll find Yuki, discovered in 5 to 10% of the fruits harvested. These aren't passed as marketable, so they're used for processing to make syrups, snacks, and various desserts. Fuji is strictly recognized for its perfect shape, flawless pattern, and color. Only 1 in 1,000 can be passed as Fuji. The fruit should rest inside the refrigerator for 2 to 3 hours before serving. This allows the sugars to settle and enhance your tasting experience. Cut the fruit in half from the top. By cutting horizontally, you're not getting the full flavor profile. Brix meters are used to measure sugar content in aqueous solutions. To give you an idea of the Brix levels, yuzu or a common citrus is 7, soda is 12, and this crown melon is 16. This is just from the leaking juices. Gather all the seeds and place them in the container for cleansing. Rinse seeds in filtered water. The harsh high TDS water is unsafe for seed cleaning and will impact the germination process due to the residue left behind. Drain water from the viable seeds and allow to air or sun dry. Scarification is not required since these seeds are collected from a ripe fruit. Hand select seeds if desired. Without getting into too much detail, hand selection provides selective breeding and passes desirable genetics to create a better cultivar. Peat pots are eco-friendly. It naturally dissolves into the soil and provides food for the ecosystem. Use organic media. This helps the plants grow naturally, healthier, and a developed immune system. Fill the cells and avoid compacting, as it will create poor drainage. You might discover local residents. Allow them to move in as they'll provide many benefits. Make small pockets to place seeds. By burying seeds too deep, it will cause them to drown. Carefully inspect seeds for potential mold issues. Wash them in 1 part hydrogen peroxide and 10 parts water solution to sanitize. Seeds can be planted as late as May for a bounty in August. It requires about 100 days from germination to harvest. Place 1 to 2 seeds per cell if you feel confident with the germination rate. This also helps with culling the seedlings when the moment arrives. Cover the seedlings with a thin layer of soil. Failed germination occurs when the seeds are buried too deep and end up drowning. Generously soak the seeds with filtered water, carefully not to drench it. Place it in a warm location with the kiss of the sun to germinate. After a week they'll germinate and the cotyledons appear. Within 10 days, they've established growth and require transplanting to extend their root system. At 14 days, the cotyledons will senesce. Roots grow aggressively at this stage and transplanting is required. I originally grew exotic fruits in this greenhouse. They fully matured and have been relocated into a more suitable location. A series of tasks need to be completed before the seedlings could move in. For land coverage, use straw or natural mulch that has charcoal or plant-based dyes. First, we had to clear the landscape and level the area to provide proper elevation and drainage. There are thousands of tiny specks, its castings left by worms, and also traces of mycorrhiza. If time permits, leave mulch in a pile a few weeks before usage. The introduction of microbial life creates an impenetrable barrier to protect your landscape and attract many beneficial organisms. Avoid synthetic mulch such as rubber or plastic coverings. It doesn't provide enough air circulation to create a hospitable environment for beneficial organisms. Keep mulch moist to attract these organisms. Worms will migrate to the lower part during the day and they'll come up when it's saturated. Do not apply any fertilizers as there are no benefits during this stage. It's important to evenly distribute the mulch. This enables the organisms to naturally spread. If large amounts remain, they'll end up gravitating towards that area. Reusable plastic containers designed for intense sun exposure is advised. Fabric may be sufficient, but in drier climates, they require 3 to 4 times as much as watering in comparison. Organize the containers in a manner that suits your needs. Space them out to enable the movement of traffic. Your activities will increase as the plants mature. Use organic compost or potting soil for this application. Any other soil medium used outside of this context will yield poor results. The soil was left to age and reseeded from my previous years of gardening. Hundreds of compost worms reside in here, and in the course of a few months, the soil becomes rich and full of microbes. Avoid overflowing the containers and packing in soil. The goal is to keep it loose to create several air pockets. Over time, it will slowly close up once the microbes fully populate. This Gulf fertility butterfly was in distress, and I saved it from a spider web. The camera wasn't on when I was wrestling the spider to save it. No one was harmed in this process, and this butterfly gave me a high five and continued its journey. Level the soil. This creates an even watering and uniform root ball development. Uneven watering causes unstable growth in both the plant and the fruit. Hand select your healthiest and strongest specimens. Focus on stalk thickness, broader leaves, and confirm it by checking the root extension. Once a difficult decision has been made, call the weaker plant. Repotting or removing the natural container isn't necessary, but you should smell the roots. These plants have been spoiled with worm tea their entire lives, so they've developed an immunity to transplant shock and demonstrated exceptional vigor at this stage. Give some plants away to friends or family before composting for any seedlings that were not selected. Transplanting should be conducted in the morning or in the evening when the plant activity declines, to prevent stress or transplant shock. Center the plant and give it plenty of space for fertilizer distribution and saturation periods. Soak each plant in worm tea before transplanting. This encourages a healthy transition, boosts its immune system, and prevents fungal infections. Once transplanting has been completed, saturate enough to settle the soil. Fertilizing is not required at this stage. In fact, it will cause health issues since the plants will not use it for at least another week. Roots are settling and will create fertilizer burn. Signs of browning at the leaf tips will appear. Top wiring is encouraged during this stage. It benefits the plant, but as it matures, it's not recommended as it causes fungal and mold issues. Let the plants acclimate and settle in. Growth will initiate in a few days. If a plant bed is part of your plan, transplant them in the same manner you would for container gardening. Provide them at least a square foot of growing space. This will maximize your capacity for more fruits. Pre-soak the plant bed a day prior to prevent transplant shock, or soak the seedlings in worm tea. High levels of saturation is required for the plant bed due to the amount of real estate and competing plants. With container gardening, they have dedicated space to grow without the competition. 2 days after transplanting, the vigor in the plants accelerate. Call the weaker plants if the decision wasn't already made when transplanting initiated. Focus on leggy and thin plants. Once selected, prune them at the ground level and place them in the worm bin. Leave one plant per container to allow them dedicated space and nutrients to thrive. Compared to a plant bed, competition tends to create unstable growth unless it's professionally managed. Once signs of flowers on a tendril appear, begin staking the plants to encourage vertical growth. Natural stakes such as bamboo and wood are recommended for this application, as they'll attract many beneficial insects and microbes. Adjusting the plant structure provides an even posture to increase air circulation, reduces health complications, and increases plant vigor. Due to limited real estate, use one stake per plant. Vertical growth is natural for these plants. If left unchecked, lateral growth becomes the central leader, which we want to avoid. Vertical growth is not only aesthetically pleasing and organized when it comes to husbandry, it drastically reduces the health complications. Complement the posture adjustments with plant clips. Invest in high-quality clips that can be reused for several seasons. Secure the central leader. It'll help identify what to thin out when pruning is involved. Unsecure plants grow on another spectrum and substantial amount of energy is wasted. Apply additional clips as the plants continue to grow. The top should always be secured to prevent issues with posture development. It's important to prune the lateral stems as the plant grows. It'll focus the energy into the central leader. Male flowers accompany tendrils as they appear. Female flowers emerge a few days later. Improve mature leaves by thinning out the lateral stem growth and flowers. It'll direct valuable resources to encourage leaf development. Mist plants in the morning to attract beneficial insects and maintain humidity levels if you're located in a dry climate. Avoid this step if it's humid and cloudy, it'll create mold issues. Early development of male flowers aren't ideal candidates. Perch them along with lateral stem growth to encourage a healthy growth cycle for plants. Pests like to hide in new flush or leaf crevices. Inspect them routinely. Engage in early pest detection as prevention. Spotting them early helps mitigate outbreaks and infestations that could end the season. Apply worm tea as a preventative measure against unwanted pests. Organic gardening comes with many challenges, and the ones on the highest of the list are the pests of every shape and form imaginable. Saturate plants with worm tea on a weekly basis in addition to routine watering. Worm tea can be used as a secondary fertilizer in conjunction with worm castings. It's important to note that the quality of the worm castings utilized is a ruling result in superior melons. Substitute with organic fertilizers if access to worm castings is a challenge. I strongly encourage you to start your own worm bin. Explore my channel to get started. Replicate the procedure for plant beds, but more aggressively. Apply a generous amount of worm tea to ensure even distribution to the entire population. Stake plants with clips and utilize the bamboo for vertical growth. Saturate plants during the morning and not evening hours. They'll easily become infected with fungal diseases and contaminate the entire plant bed. Aggressive pruning is required to ensure the health of the plants. They'll become tangled and constrict other plants within the vicinity. Place the clippings in the worm bin and recycle the nutrients. Female flower development takes place a few days after male flowers appear. They can be located in nodes along the lateral stems. Target older growth when pollinating. It'll yield quality results. By eliminating early blooming male flowers, mature male flowers have a larger bloom and pollen that is more fertile. These can be found after 10 nodes. Early blooming male flowers are much smaller by comparison. They'll appear in clusters along the central leader and continue to grow. They're not ideal and should be purged completely. This male flower is a perfect specimen to collect pollen and pollinate the female flowers. The receptacle is enlarged, signifying fertility. In the early stages of male flower development, we can identify them along the central leader. Beside it, along the lateral stems are female flowers. The method for choosing female flowers is consistent with that of male flowers. This female flower is an ideal candidate, displaying optimal health, vigorous growth, and desirable coloration. Locate and identify the potential prospects so they can be scheduled within the pollination period. Flowers bloom in the morning to afternoon. They'll wilt by late afternoon and no longer valuable. Prune flowers and lateral stems for those not selected to prevent wasting energy. Open space is an ideal environment for melons to thrive. Air circulation provides oxygen required for plants to photosynthesize. Retrace your steps and locate the females you prospected and pollinate. Natural pollinators include ants, bees, butterflies, and wind. Acquire a prime male flower and carefully remove the petals, exposing the stamen. Do your best to retain the stem for control. It makes pollination effortless. Make contact with the stigma using the stamen. Feel for the subtle friction to confirm pollination success. Large male flowers typically appear after the 10th node on the central leader. While they may occasionally develop on the lateral stems, their growth should be discouraged. Pollinating once per plant is sufficient. Continue the process by locating additional male and female flowers. The process becomes easier as you progress. What I also like to do is remove the petal according to the time I pollinated. This was conducted as part of my research for the best time to pollinate for high success. Prune the stem 2 nodes beyond the pollinated fruit to direct all energy towards its development. Purge all non-prospective candidates to allow the plant to focus all of its resources into the fruit development. Replicate the process, pollinate 2 to 3 female flowers and allow them to grow for a week after the fruit sets. By pruning the stem at the first node distal to the female flower, you ensure the plant's resources are concentrated on fruit maturation. One of the highest threats to melon plants are leaf miners, right next to aphids. The brown marks are my attempts to dispatch them in the early stages of pest detection. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, so we'll have to manually extract them. Purge the entire leaf if it's beyond recovery, as these are the plant's mature leaves that stay with them for the rest of their lives. Organic gardening brings many challenges. Early pest detection should be the highest priority. Even in controlled environments, issues do arise. My early attempts to dispatch the invader with a pinch failed. Luckily, we followed its wake of destruction and located it. It's important to retain as much of the adult leaves as possible. Only purge if it's really necessary. The leaves will recover with minimal damage. Organic gardening encourages many natural predators, such as this jumping spider. Sometimes they become overwhelmed with infestations, so manual control is required. Its sidekick, a grass spider, exists in harmony. After careful observation, they become very close friends and share the same web. Shiso visits the greenhouse several times a day. She makes sure uninvited wildlife stays out. She'll make several patrols around the vicinity and rest on her hammock that oversees the entire greenhouse. She's very well cared for. As the plants mature, a bamboo foundation is constructed to allow structured vertical growth and a support system to hold melons. Use jute twine when gardening. It's a natural material that safely decomposes when composted. The low carbon footprint makes it a perfect solution for home gardens. These natural twines function really well in the sun exposed to everything nature throws at it. Since it's also natural, they can be placed in the worm bin. At the end of every season, I collect the plant remains along with newspapers, jute twine, and place them in the worm bin to make fertilizer for next season. Being exposed to the elements, you do not have to worry about them coming undone. I've applied this solution for many seasons and haven't encountered any issues. One thing I really do enjoy is the aesthetic appearance instead of using synthetic material that has to be sorted out at the end of the season. Lateral stem growth is aggressive during this stage and should be pruned to reduce wasted energy. Once the vines reach your desired height, or roughly around 2 meters or 6 feet, prune the top to suspend vertical growth. The plant will focus its energy on fruit development. Lateral stem growth appears a day or two later once the top is trimmed. Remove any unwanted growth below the female flowers in order for the plants to focus on fruit development. Consistent pruning of growth below fruit sets is crucial to prevent energy diversion, ensuring the fruit maintains its potential Fuji tier quality rather than degrading. Blanch the stems and leaves for consumption or place them in the worm bin. Use organic fertilizers such as worm castings. Avoid using commercial fertilizers without clear measurements of NPK, as it will create undesired flavor quality and cause health issues to your plants. It will also contaminate your soil with unknown substances. Feed your soil and your plants will feed you. The recommended NPK for melons, which stands for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium for this application, is a balanced distribution of 10-10-10 for solids since it's slow releasing. For liquid fertilizers, use a less potent concoction of 5-5-5. It's an aqueous form and will directly feed the roots. In this case, I'm using my custom blend of worm tea which satisfies these requirements. Fertilize only in the morning when the plants are active. 50% of the liquid fertilizers are wasted during the afternoon and more than 60% of it's wasted in the evening due to runoff. Worm castings and worm tea are neutral and will not burn plants or cause fruit drops. Fertilize generously a month after the fruit sets. Overdosing will cause fruit cracks due to excess water and nitrogen. Worm tea should be applied weekly to create a barrier against pests. It also controls unwanted growth from powdery mildew. The beauty of using organic worm castings and tea is that you do not need exact measurements. You can also make them in abundance and never have to worry about running out. Only use filtered water when watering. Traces of chemicals such as chlorine and fluoride will eradicate beneficial microbes you worked hard to accomplish. Signs of successful fruit sets appear a few days after pollination. They can be identified as enlarged ovoid fruit with wilted blossoms. If they're not successfully pollinated, it'll turn yellow and drop during this phase. Retain the optimal fruit candidate and remove all others to concentrate the plant's energy on a single high-quality yield. Purge the entire stem associated with the fruit. The amount of energy redirected to the central leader provides the quality-encouraging Fuji potential. The following day, I noticed red sap on the site of several stem purges. It appears to be a mild sign of Fusarium wilt, which is a fungal infection that has spread throughout the plant. I decided to let the plant recover with the nutrients provided to improve its immune system. Then the extending stems, this prevents additional growth and diverting valuable energy away from the fruit. This is strictly optional to purge damaged fruits caused by the leaf or vine impact. Damage caused by the fine hairs of the plants create an undesired appearance. It also creates poor quality fruit since the energy is focusing on healing instead of developing. The fruit should be retained if it meets acceptable standards or if it's the sole remaining fruit. To achieve the most desired results, I strongly advise selecting the fruit that exhibits the highest quality. Mount the fruit using jute twine. It's capable of holding a capacity beyond its matured weight. Place it between the stem and the melon and adjust the height to make it stand perpendicular. Secure the sling over the bamboo support we constructed, wrap it around and tie a single-sided knot. This creates a fully adjustable knot to adjust or remove with a single hand operation. Ensure the twine is wrapped below the stem, around the leaf and the fruit. It will not have any adverse effects on fruit development. During the peak of my melon season, I noticed leaf damage that isn't naturally occurring. Upon inspection, I noticed tiny little hairs left behind rodents and claw marks. And my worst fears, mortal bite marks that ended the season for affected plants. Several other plants had missing fruits and leaves that were unrecognizable. I tried salvaging by pruning the central leader and allowing the lateral stems to reach maturity. The damage caused to several mature leaves also meant the end of the season for several plants. My attempts to save the plants provided them a glimmer of hope. A thorough investigation revealed the rodent-induced physical damage had led to the transmission of fungal infections across multiple plants. Luckily, I extended the growth to several dozen plants in hopes of saving the melon season. I completed a thorough inspection for contamination and fungal diseases. Any plants showing signs were removed and quarantined for sanitation. Signs of underdeveloped fruit may appear. This is likely caused by the intruders damaging the mature leaves and plant stress. Some had signs of scratch damage left behind by the rodents. They did not appear as natural damage from leaf or stem impact. It was very unfortunate, but this fruit was contaminated, so it had to be discarded. I allowed it to remain and continue my research. The amount of prospective plants was promising, but I didn't feel confident with the current situation. I continued to follow the process and stayed positive. As the melons materialized, I continued to provide the attention required with the hats to prevent discoloration and sun scald. The hats provide more than just protection from the sun damage and discoloration, it's also a great barrier to prevent pests. My heart sank at this dreadful sight. A white suffocating blanket of powdery mildew had descended upon my remaining plants. Even worse, early stages of bacterial infection had spread it silently unnoticed. The amount of excess nitrogen was left to waste due to fungal infections. The leaves suffocated and dried up until it eventually dies. I also discovered other diseases, gummy stem blight, which start the lesions either at the stem or at the leaves from fungal infections. A panoramic view of my greenhouse was a grotesque image of heavily infected plants with every infectious disease possible. Each have succumbed in the worst way imaginable. This leaf alone contained a single disease that is season ending for melons. You're looking at a bacterial infection, crown blight, fusarium wilt, gummy blight, powdery mildew, leaf miners, root rot, rodent damage, and other diseases I'm unable to identify behind so many on the surface. Phytophthora crown blight is very common in cucurbit plants, right next to powdery mildew. Grafting disease-resistant cultivars will improve their immunity. Gummy stem blight doesn't stop at the stems, it extends to the leaves and even the fruits. While it's not harmful to humans, I wouldn't consume this. Consider composting or placing in a worm bin. The worms will break it down and neutralize any potential threats and contamination. A vermiculture worm bin remains unaffected by cucurbit plant diseases. Fungal infections require a living host, therefore they perish when the plant dies. Quarantine disposal activity when breaking down plant remains and the contaminated remnants. Insects and wildlife are not affected, but it's possible for them to spread the infection at a very low chance. Plants no longer require saturation. Let it gracefully pass to prevent spreading outside of quarantine. Everything that came in contact with infectious diseases is contaminated. Sanitation and special care is required. Allow the soil to dry up so it can be safely sanitized and repurposed. Fruits that show no signs of infections or contamination are safe for consumption, but strongly discouraged since it's not fully matured. Regardless of the health issues, they resemble this appearance when they were first introduced in 1921 from England. Seeds should not be collected for germination, as you want to avoid spreading poor genetics to the next generation. At this stage, it's required at least another month to fully mature and develop the fructose. Compost in a worm bin or collect the seeds and grow them into microgreens for consumption. To avoid perpetuating suboptimal genetics, these viable seeds are best used for microgreens or vermicompost to remove them from the gene pool. This worm was hungry, so I decided to split the fruit and expose the contents for it to enjoy. Upon revealing the interior, I noticed seeds growing. This is a rare occurrence called viviparity, when a seed germinates inside or on the fruit. The seedlings are safe for consumption, however, if allowed to mature, they will develop into large plants given the robust root growth and appearance. Avoid planting the seedlings to maturity, as they do not carry the genetics we're looking for in terms of plant vigor and desirable traits. It's possible they may have developed a more resistant immunity to diseases acquired during its life cycle. The germination rate appears to be hovering over 90% as there are additional seeds showing signs of life. Allow them to remain in the worm bin and continue growth so they can gracefully senesce for the worms to enjoy. If it interests you, harvest the microgreens once the seeds are hulled. The flavor can be described as a melon-like flavor, extremely reminiscent of crown melons and a touch of cucumber. I've decided to let the worms enjoy this feast for the valiant effort they contributed this year. This will also encourage population growth given the abundance of resources and shelter provided. Riddled with setbacks and initial failed attempts, I was determined to complete my journey with measurable results. I reached out to the owners of the Crown Melon Farm in Shizuoka and requested guidance on how to achieve success. A few weeks later, I found myself learning from the legendary masters. They offer many tiers of melons that sell out daily due to limited availability. Located behind the shop are several greenhouses that grow these extraordinary melons. The farm is located in Fukuroi City, the eastern part of Shizuoka Prefecture. Each facility yields different stages of these melons, allowing them to harvest year-round, also through succession planting. This allows them to harvest 2 crops a year. Inside each greenhouse is a different stage of melons. Regardless of containment, pest control should always be utilized. This greenhouse contains melons that are less than a month away from harvest and are going through the early stages of fruit massaging and polishing. They'll be given hats once they graduate. In my next video, I'll translate everything so we can understand how to achieve these goals and enjoy the best melons for the rest of our lives. I was given this rare opportunity to conduct my own research and understand the process and what it takes to grow these melons. The time invested here allowed me to navigate through the unknown and understand the best approach to achieve success. This specific greenhouse was developed for research and they didn't allow any visitors outside of their circle. Each subject contained an insect or disease to test the resistance and gauge the longevity of melons. The fine mesh used for containment allows visibility during analysis. The insects are sacrificed for research during this process. After a day in the greenhouse, you're offered a feast of crown melons. You're given several tiers to indulge to your heart's content and granted a blind taste test. I was given the name Moromasta, which translates to Melon Master, and presented with an award for being able to accurately identify every sample of crown melon I was surprised with. They even allowed me to extend this experience with my friends. Sharing this extraordinary experience with loved ones created an unforgettable moment that unlocked a new core memory. My passion intensifies as I walked away from this bittersweet moment.
아, 못 받아 먹고.